Hello, my name is Dr. Sidney Freeman Jr., and this is Communiversity, an initiative that empowers Black young people with the tools that they need to impact our communities. This program was inspired by Minister Ronnie Vanderhorst, who was committed to empowering young Black professionals. And I am so glad that we have been able to do that over this last year. We also want to thank the North Pacific Union Conference of Seventh-day Adventists for underwriting this program. And I am sure we're going to have an excellent program today. We're going to talk about the ways in which we can support our young people who are particularly gifted. And we have the number one researcher and educator in this area. Her name is Dr. Donna Ford. She is a distinguished professor of education and human ecology and Kirwan Institute faculty affiliate at the Ohio State University's College of Education and Human Ecology. She serves in the Educational Studies Department's Special Education Program. Professor Ford conducts research primarily in gifted in education and multicultural and urban education. Specifically, her work focuses on areas such as recruiting and retaining culturally different students in gifted education, multicultural curriculum and instruction, and African American identity, and also one more, African American family involvement. Professor Ford has written almost 400 articles and book chapters. She has made over 2,000 presentations at professional conferences and organizations and in school districts. She is the author and co-author of many books, including Race Mentoring Through Social Media. Black and Hispanic scholars share their journeys in the academy, and Gifted and Advanced Black Students in School, an anthology of critical works. Dr. Ford's work has been recognized by various professional organizations, and she has earned dozens of awards. Professor Ford is most proud of the awards received from student organizations, such as the Black Student Alliance Distinguished Faculty Award and Jimmy Franklin Outstanding Vanderbilt Faculty Award. Dr. Ford is co-founder of the Scholar Identity Institute for Males and creator of the Ford Female Achievement Model of Excellence. She serves as an academic She serves on academic publication boards such as the Journal of Negro Education and has memberships in various professional organizations such as the National Association for Multicultural Education. On a personal note, she is a proud mother of Kyle Ford and grandmother of Kyle Ford Jr. And we are so excited to have her on this program. How are you doing, Dr. Ford?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this. And after your wonderful introduction, I feel even better. Thank you.
Awesome. We are so elated to have you on this platform. And particularly, we thought it was important to figure out how we can support our gifted students, many of them who are misidentified, I will say. Mm-hmm. I'll start out with this question. How can someone recognize the early signs of giftedness in Black children, especially when they're overlooked many times by our schools?
Well, one thing I want to say is that, as you said earlier, I focus on gifted. I'm going to call it gifted and talented, GATE to be short. All right. Mm-hmm. Gifted and talented education, GATE. And so like a Venn diagram, and then, multicultural, anti-racist, culturally responsive education. And so what I love about having this conversation with you is that we're going to look at GATE through a cultural lens to be, culturally responsive as well as equitable. But now when it comes to looking at signs, there are a number of characteristics, whether one is GATE in intelligence, specific achievement, like math or science or language arts, creativity, leadership, and visual and performing arts. So there's 5 areas. Okay. So it really depends on which of those areas we're talking about. But most school districts primarily focus on IQ, intelligence, and then achievement. So I'm just saying we look at these characteristics about like advanced speaking, advanced critical thinking. All right. Being very creative, thinking outside the box, innovative, unique, and more. It just depends on which one of those areas we're talking about. So we look at those, but we also make sure we look at those through a cultural lens. Now, I just want to give one example. So one of the first characteristics that families and educators look for is that children speak early. All right. And they have advanced language, vocabulary. And I say to them, but are you taking in consideration how students are speaking Black English? Okay. Or are you saying, or do you look at Black English through a deficit lens? And then, we talk about, say, a child who's Hispanic and is bilingual. Well, we need to be considered bilingual. I can probably say without actually having asked you this, but I'm this way too. When we have to, be on platforms like this, we speak mainstream, not correct, not proper, mainstream English. And then when we can just relax and chill, then it goes to Black English. And Black English is a formal language. It's a formal language identified as one since 2001. People don't know this. So when it's a formal language, if I can speak mainstream English and then Black English, I'm bilingual. So are you taking that into consideration? Now that's just if we only focus on language. But the key thing is being advanced in any and everything. And that is compared to others of your age. Listen carefully, your experience and your environment. You do not compare wealthy white children to low income Black children. You don't compare high income Black children to low income Black children. You compare those from the same backgrounds. And then we're talking about being culturally responsive and equitable. So, I mean, it's so much to say about that question. But I hope that at least gives the audience some information to begin with. But it must be done through a cultural lens, and make sure you are careful of who are you comparing us to.
So I want to go back because earlier off the camera, we were just talking about the importance of understanding how underrepresented many of our Black children are in special gifted and talented programs. Could you talk a little bit about those numbers to help our audience understand what we're dealing with?
Well, I want the audience to brace themselves because this is very upsetting, to say the least. And that is, no matter what year you look at, when you go to the Office for Civil Rights Data Collection, ocrdata.ed.gov, when you go there and you look at national data, you look at state data, look at district data, look at building data, almost no matter where you are, and that includes when we're high income, okay, and Black. No matter what our characteristics are, our demographics are, we are underrepresented. So, for example, not too long ago, we were 19% of public schools, but only 10% of GATE. that is almost a 50% underrepresentation. And
Wow.
that is equivalent to like over 250,000 Black children each year not getting the services they need. Then when you look at the more recent data from OCR from 2020 to 21, I think it says we're like 17% of the school districts, but only 8% of GATE. So again, we're talking about what? 50, and actually a little more than 50% underrepresented. So that percentage, that number still hovers around 250 something thousand Black children, a quarter of a million Black children not getting the services we need every year. Now look at that over the lifespan of GATE, over the lifespan of advanced placement, over the lifespan of international baccalaureate and more. All right. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands not getting the services we need. And Black children, more than any other racial group, are the most underrepresented. And Dr. Freeman, I would be more likely to be identified than you. So we just can't do it by race. We got to talk about within the group too. So Black males are the most underrepresented of all groups.
You must be in my head. That was my next follow-up question with regard to one of the things that I've seen just based on your work. You have looked at gifted and talented programs and issues related to males, and you've looked at it from the standpoint of females. Could you talk about maybe some differences in identifying the gifts and talents that Black females and Black males have, and how a parent could possibly identify that and alert their teachers and schools that they may need additional services to support them?
Well, I hope this answers your question. One of the first things we have to look at is to make sure that our Black children, but especially our Black boys, are first and foremost not referred for special education. So there's a deficit lens that blinds too many educators, not all, but too many the white female educators from looking at the assets that Black males, well, Blacks overall, but particularly Black males with this question, bring to the academic setting. So we've got to make sure that families are not endorsing this misperception that their boys need special education services for emotional and behavioral disorders and for being ADHD, just as two of many examples, okay? Two of many examples. Now, I'm not talking about if your child has a visual problem, has a hearing problem, has a physical problem. There's nothing that is subjective about that. We're talking about more subjective areas, okay? So, but we need to make sure that, like, for example, looking at our children being vervistic, that they, which means very active, that they're not misperceived as hyperactive. There's a cultural characteristic there. All right. And so I like to look at the work of Wade Boykin and his Afrocentric cultural styles. And that goes back to here's characteristic of gifted, here's characteristic of Blacks, for example. Then you got to take in consideration gender. But males, period. But then Black males in this case tend to be more say vervistic. And so but that's the number one thing that I think keeps our boys from being perceived as mature and things like that. So they're not likely to be thought of as advanced. It's likely to be misthought of as needing special education services. Last point is, it is true that our children could be thrice exceptional. So thrice exceptional means you're Black, you have gifted and talented needs, and you have special education needs. So I'm not saying that don't rule out special education needs, but make sure that so much to say, make sure that they're not being misdiagnosed as special education so that they don't get gifted and talented education. And that means definitely understanding about the tests that are being used, the assessments, screening instruments that are being used. So we don't have to be educators. We can get on the internet and find out locally, and district-wide and statewide, how children are being identified and assessed for special education as well as GATE. And that way you could be proactive and help your children. And I'm sorry, and go to the state website for gifted, like Ohio Association for Gifted Children, etc. Go to your website, and then you'll see resources often for families to help you. May not be through a cultural lens, but at least you'll know what's going on in your damn district.
Well, I wanted to follow up with regards to Black girls. So is there anything that are there ways in which Black girls are misperceived to have gifted and talented backgrounds?
So I mentioned being verbistic as just one, all right, of several with our boys. But with the girls, it's called oral tradition. Again, you're talking about boykin. And we are so are males, highly verbal, but it's in a different way, Dr. Freeman. So, I'm Dr. Ford and I'm Donna from Cleveland. Donna from Cleveland going to tell you like it is. And that means in school too. So we're doing an assignment and I'm like, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. We did the same thing last week. What are you doing? Okay, now I'm in trouble. Or if I say, something like, I am so bored. This is not interesting at all. Being very blunt and direct, I'm going to get in trouble. If I'm like, wait a minute, why we keep learning about all these dead white people? When are we going to learn about some Black people? Then I'm going to be in trouble. But Donna from Cleveland will be blunt and say that. So this oral tradition gets a lot of Black girls in trouble for being very, very blunt. We're not lying. We're just saying what others won't say. We're going to say it. And we will say it before Black boys will. So that's the one. Verb for boy. Black boy stands out the most for being under, misperceived. All right. Deficit based. But then it's oral tradition for girls. And then on our report cards, we're often told, talks too much. So it's like, talks a lot. And it's like, well, if you put talks a lot and it's by an A, then hell, I'm going to keep talking. I never knew they were telling me to shut up. All right. I never knew they were saying, shut up, stop it. It's by an A. Okay. So we get in trouble, sent to the office and upset teachers for being blunt and direct. And so I have to teach Black girls to be honest, but to tone it down. Down.
So I wanted to ask you about, some assessments or things that parents or guardians could ask. So once they go to their state website and do some other investigations on resources, are there particular things they need to be asking their districts, their principals, related to an assessment that will allow them to get into gifted and talented programs?
Well, there absolutely are. And even if you don't have that conversation initially, based on you don't know about these measures, then make sure that, again, you get on the internet and you look them up. So there are books like Tests in Print and Mental Measurement Yearbook, where you can look up the instrument, and they often tell you about, biases. All right. So that you would know. And if it says bias against, Black students or Black, well, I don't think it is succinct and goes into boys and girls, but if it says Black students, then and you're armed with this information. So that's two books to, look up. The other look at. The other thing is there are, so if you caregivers and educators look up October 2021, the American Psychological Association, APA, finally declared that tests are biased. And they have been complicit all these years in not admitting that. So these tests are biased. And you need to make sure you read that document and that you can share that you know this. All right. APA, I mean, you can't, there's no other organization that could put something out that says tests are biased and be more affirmed than APA. The other thing is, I want you in particular to look for nonverbal measures like the Nagliera, Nagliera, Nagliera nonverbal ability test, and the more updated measures. Okay. So why do we advocate for nonverbal measures? Two reasons, Dr. Freeman. One is it has reduced cultural loading. Well, I want to start with a different one. Reduce linguistic loading. So there's a question that might say, how are work and play alike? Well, do you see the language problem and the cultural, especially since too many Blacks, because of injustices, are unemployed or underemployed? So they're not coming. How can they come home and talk to their children about work? Or we have these difficult jobs, right? You know, I don't want to name any because I don't want to be disrespectful. And then you coming home, you're not saying anything about, oh, I just love doing this because it's so, you know, underpaid and terrible, you know, funky and things like that. So, but if you are head of you're CEO, then yeah, you can come home and you can have these conversations, you know, about how, you know, just love your job. But how work and play alike, if you're want to be silly, you'll be like, oh, they both have 4 letters. There's something that you do. But you know what? I'm not going to do this to you. I was going to ask you, how do you think work and play are alike? But I'm not going to do that to you. But anyway, the answer is they're both something that you enjoy. So that's white, upper class, culturally loaded. Okay. Wow. They're just, you know, what would you do? You don't, this is rhetorical, but it's a real formal question. Dr. Freeman, if a boy much smaller than you starts to fight with you, and then for me, it would say if a girl much smaller than me starts to fight with me. Well, as I was growing up, my mother said, if somebody put their hands on you, hit them back. Well, you're going to get a 0 for that answer. You see what that's culture again? So look at the context in the situation. And so, but the nonverbals, they are pictures. All right. And hopefully they're not like, you know, pictures with a table and a tablecloth and asking questions like that. They're more, you know, generic pictures. Okay. So therefore, there's no cultural context and there's no linguistic loading. And when that happens, Blacks get the same IQ, you know, within a matter of 1 or 2 points as white children. Whereas on just 1 or 2. Whereas on a traditional bias instrument, there's a 15-point gap. So when it says, oh, you have to get in the gifted program, you have to have an IQ of 130 on a traditional test, because there's nothing wrong with us, but because they're biased, we get like our average would be an 85, something like that. Whites get an average of 100. I haven't talked about any other groups, but to get the program, you have to 130. Well, we have to have 45 more points. They have to have 30. So we won't get in because 30 more points for us is going to be 115. But when you get a nonverbal measure, whites have 100, and we got like 97 points or 98. So we are competitive. The instrument nonverbals are not biased against whites either, but they are not biased against whites, but we can now compete. So you have to study this instrument and look at the cutoff scores and look to see any research that says they're biased. And by the way, almost all of them are, other than certain nonverbals.
No, this is amazing. I'm just thinking about my family members and loved ones that I'm going to be sending this video to. as they have young children. And what I'm going to do is all these resources that you mentioned, I'm going to look them up and put them in our show notes so that our people are able to access those materials. Thank you for providing that information. So speaking of family members and all that, I remember when I was growing up, my dad was so excited that my little brother, got into a magnet school, right? And so it was like he's gonna be a preppy and all that. So and my dad's mind, but it goes to this question of what are the best spaces for our Black children to learn. And so I wanted to just get your perspective on, sending our Black children to predominantly white schools that are affluent, that have money, versus you have private Black schools, our African centric institutions. Those are who are in urban environments. Could you just kind of talk about the options that Black parents and guardians may have, and what things they should be asking leaders when considering sending their child to a school?
Well, let me just say thank you. There's one more option that I want to mention, and that is homeschooling.
Homeschooling,
I know that we are working, or we're trying to work. I know that we may not have all the credentials to educational credentials to help our children at home, but there's a lot of Black homeschooling resources. And maybe in the last, I'm just going to say, definitely since COVID-19, homeschooling, there was some research saying that Black students were some of the most, the homeschooling increased for Black students almost more than any other group. All right. So homeschooling is an option. All right. But when I think of magnet schools, I just recall that they were some of the first ways to desegregate these schools, and in particular advanced classes. So you weren't necessarily in gate, but you were, close to it, because they still were not letting us in these gate programs. All right. So I don't have a particular preference, other than get on the Office for Civil Rights website, ocrdata.ed.gov. You go straight to the school building that you're interested in, straight to the school building. I didn't say just the school district, to the school building, and you look up things like special education demographics, look up gate demographics, AP, but I want you to look up suspension and expulsion as well. And then when you look at all this data, you can be like, oh yeah, my child is going to be okay. Or otherwise, oh hell no, they got a positive reputation. Black kids. All right.
Yeah.
You have this ammunition yourself, and you don't have to really ask anybody, about this. And I know that right now there's a lot of stuff going on again with school choice. I don't know what's going on, in each,
state
each state and things like that right now. But please, I want you to have choice by knowing what are the success rates of students in the school building, not the school district of where you live. And sometimes we can't always move, but at least choose, the school or the path of least resistance. And of all the options, choose the one that is most going to increase the belongingness for your child. And go ahead.
Sorry. So when they collect that data, is that for all schools? Is that for private schools and public schools?
Great question. So it's for charter schools, and it's for public schools. It's not going to be for private schools. But if you look at the condition, so you can download this immediately. Condition for Education 2024, 25, I think maybe out. I think it comes out May of every year. But anyway, just say Condition of Education 2024, and you will be able to download the report, and it will give you private school information. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to get on Office for Civil Rights website, and look that up, but you can still get an idea of what private schools are like for children. I went to a private school back in 1976. I'm showing my age. 76 as a 10th grader. I was living in East Cleveland, all Black, all poor. I was but highly gifted. I went there on an ABC scholarship, and it was the worst experience of my life psychologically. And my mother, I'm not going to say things that happened because, I don't want to trigger anyone. But my mother finally had to take me out of that school. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here today. I'm just going to say that. Okay. And then I was able to get back to loving being Black and not being embarrassed about being poor. So when we put so there's a book called Mason at Blue Hill. That's my favorite book. It's like for fourth graders. Mason, M-A-I think it's S-O-Z-O-N. And people say, why don't you share your story? I'm like, it's written there basically. I'm not the author, but that's my story. And so I like to have families also, read books about, even if they're, not, what is the word I'm looking for, doctor? Even if they're just, children's books. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I want them to be able to read these books and get an idea, for things, for how things might be, especially if you've never attended a private school. So I'm not putting down private schools. My grandson, he's 14. He's been in private schools since preschool, and he's done, quite well. But I made sure I put him at the most diverse private school that my son needed. And he has been extremely successful, extremely. And that means not just academically, but that I'm talking about racially, racial pride, and socially.
So I was going to ask something else, but since you're here, how do you ensure that your gifted child has that balance? Because it's been interesting to see in the last few years. I know you've probably seen that. Remember the young boy who, when Obama was in office, he was short and stuff, really smart. And he would always say that he wanted to be a president. Well, they have another one who's like a little Neil deGrasse. You know who I'm talking about, right? And so people are pulling at them because they're excited about their gifts and talents. But we want to also make sure that they also have their racial pride, not just that they're good at at STEM fields and language, but they have some cultural understanding and sensitivity. Because we know that we've seen people who are very smart and become affluent that are Black, who actually do harm to the community because they didn't get that piece. So could you talk about ways in which we can ensure the community can ensure our gifted and talented young people have that other aspect that they need?
Yeah, sure. So Eric Hines and I, in Diverse Issues in Higher Education, now it's called EDU Ledger, okay, and in Gifted Child Today, we wrote an article about STEM and motivating Black and brown children to go into the STEM fields and to develop a STEM identity early on. And we did that by showing them not the successes and of white, and it's usually men, but white males, just Einstein and things like that. We show them Black and brown children in their age group who were being successful. So I'm just amazed at the Black male who invented soap that helps prevent cancer.
Wow.
Okay. And so we shared stories of children like these. So think about this. You're a Black male and you're interested in STEM and you've not been seeing anything in the curriculum or in person, for somebody who's in STEM. And then you get to read about these children, then you're like, wait a minute, I could do that. Okay. Because he looks like me. He's around my age, those kinds of things. So that's one thing, is to make sure that is to the best extent possible to have mentors and role models who are in the STEM fields. Okay. So that's one. And they can be adults too, but they must look like us. All right. They need to look like us, and I'm not talking about not just by race, but by gender as well. And I want them to come from, like, if I'm working with somebody, I want them to come from poverty and end up in STEM because I came from poverty. All right, and end up, being successful. So one is the mentors and role models, but I want families to know that there is a concept called bibliotherapy and cinema therapy. Bibliotherapy and cinema therapy. I've written about this as well, where and that's like when I said Amazing at Blue Hill, you find books on the issue or topic that your child is facing. And then you make sure you find a book where the character is the same race and gender. And then they are going through something similar, and eventually they end up being successful. So you can have these discussions. I'm not asking you to be a counselor. All right. I'm not asking you to be a counselor, but I am saying literature matters. Keep your damn children reading all the time anyway. So you find these books and you find these, these videos as well. Okay. And there's not so many, but there's a number of books out there. So I would say go to the website, Lee and Lowe's books. And that is probably the number one website for multicultural books. And you can look at it by age group, reading level, topics, things like that. And then you read these you let them read it, you read it, and then you sit down and you have discussions. Well, anyway, you can look up strategies about how do you use bibliotherapy, but it's so powerful, and that's one of the ways I made it out of that private school and have been so successful, because reading is cathartic for me. I just love it because I'm like, oh, I learned so much, not just about others, but about myself. I didn't write down the question that you just asked, but did I address all the parts of it?
No, you got it. You got it. I'm just thinking about. I think you talked about getting them in front of mentors. Could you talk about how you can identify mentors and role models for our students?
Well, one of my so like if students find the area of interest of your child, and it could be more than one, and then let's hope that in your community, there are organizations that you can connect with that have like a slightly older children, and even adults who can work with them and talk about their challenges and those kinds of things. Now, for example, and I don't want to be stereotypical, but I do. My grandson, my son are scholar athletes. Not every damn thing is about sports, but like if your child likes sports, then why don't you contact the university where that athlete goes, and or the athletic department, I'm sorry, and ask if they do any mentoring, and let them know which ones you would like to know that their children can connect with. Now, the reason that's important too is because when you graduate from universities and you show that you have done things like mentoring, it helps you with getting, hired. All right.
Yeah.
So it's an advantage for the athletes too, for those in the band. All right. For those in the engineering college. So just go to, not just athletes, not just the band, but go to the college and in specific the department, and ask if they have some mentoring, if their doctoral students or master students in particular are doing any mentoring.
Yeah.
So college,
So
the universities are always my first choice.
yeah.
Plus, community organizations, and I hope churches, or we don't make or anyway, religious affiliations.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm that made me think about how we can best nurture uh, our young people's their creativity and their leadership ability. So much is focused on getting great grades, and we want them to do that.
Right.
But how do we ensure that they have the space to develop their creativity and leadership skills?
So, in the field of gifted and talented education, remember I mentioned 5 areas earlier. Unfortunately, not enough is done with identifying creativity, even though it's one of the areas. But listen to this, everyone. E. Paul Torrance is considered the father of creativity. I mean, he's like gone. He probably would be 150 now. I don't know. But E. Paul Torrance. And even to this day, Dr. Freeman, this white man did more research on Black children who live in poverty and creativity than any other researcher, even to this day.
Wow.
A white male, and we're talking, like I said, he'd probably be 150 now, but definitely maybe 120.
You got to be getting close to it. You got to be getting close to it.
He was really old, but anyway, he wrote so much, and he talked about the talked about the creative dispositions and characteristics of Black children. And he said Black children, especially those who live in poverty, are more creative than any other population because we find a way out of no way. We see what others see, but we figure out how to do something with it. So I don't know if you all have seen this, but there's some videos and pictures out there where here's the funniest one to me, where someone took a commode, a toilet, and made a grill out of it.
Oh.
And then that's the part where you would sit, and then up there they had like ice for drinks and things like that. That's one of the funniest ones. But then there's ones where they make take carts from like grocery stores, and then they turn them into different things. I've even seen them turn them into lawnmowers and things like that. So I mean, and there's where they'll take like a basket and then a pole and make a basketball hoop. Oh, I just like to go on and on and on. But we're the most creative, and we got a sense of humor. That sense of humor, by the way, keeps us from doing well on tests because we be trying to joke on these damn tests, and that's not the time to be funny. I should say that too. So we got to tell our children, stop trying to be funny on tests. All right, be serious. So yeah. So I mean, there's just so much I want to say. I just hope I'm getting it all up, getting it so that the listeners can say walk away with some answers. But we got to look at creativity, and that means look up the work of E. Paul Torrance. And there's 4 areas of creativity. So one is originality, it's unique. The other one is elaboration, gives a lot of details. The other is fluency, comes up with a lot of ideas. And then flexibility, thinks outside the box. So make sure that you are giving your children open-ended, asking them open-ended questions, not a question that requires just a yes, no, but one that really makes them think. Make sure that when you give them toys, don't let them, read the directions or instructions. Let them figure out how these things, work themselves. So, kind of keep things open so that children can come up with how you work this themselves. And then when it comes to leadership, if you find that your child is very influential and others tend to do what they say, then make sure you nurture that and make sure it doesn't come into not anything negative. But I will say this, not trying to do deficit thinking. I tell schools all the time, I am upset that you all have these gang leaders, and the damn word is leader. They call gang leaders, and you're supposed to be identifying kids with leadership, but you don't focus on that population. If you just look at what are the characteristics of a gang leader, period, because we're saying leader and just a leader doing something else, characteristics are the same, just put in a different, they're just showing up in different ways. So let's get these children, and I've done that with the Scholar Identity Institute, with Gilman Whiting and things like, and et cetera, with hundreds and hundreds of boys. I've done that with them, and within one day, they working with them, it has changed their lives, and it turned their lives around, and they truly became the leaders you would want them to be. So it doesn't take years and years and years. It depends on how, what you're doing to, help them to channel the leadership, to being so influential, and popular. All right. So you don't want to squash that. You want to nurture it in positive avenues.
So I'm rounding out our conversation, and I'm going to go now to the home. How can someone create a home that facilitates the curiosity of their child, but also that cultural pride piece that we were talking about a little bit earlier?
So can you remind me to go back to the pride piece, okay? So caregivers, listeners, I want you to really understand this. It does not take a lot of money to nurture gifts and talents in your child. It is about your questioning strategies, making sure they're open-ended questions. It is about talking to your child in complete sentences. It is about using lots of different vocabulary words for the same thing. It is like playing word games, like when you're driving somewhere and kids don't even know that you're teaching them. They think we're having, just having fun. And learning should be fun, by the way. Not always is, but with us as caregivers, we need to do that. But the main thing initially is vocabulary. I told you all earlier, that's one of the two things that you have to do well on these standardized tests. A strong vocabulary, okay, to do well. And so, like when I would take my son so before I knew better, my son would be asking me a lot of questions. And I'd be like, would you just stop? I'm just trying to go to the grocery store and get some food. I wish I left you at home. I'm sorry, I would say that when he was like 4, 3, 5, before I knew any better. But once I got into education and learned, about gifted and things like that, even though I had been identified, and I was trying to get him identified, but I had to have some of this more formal knowledge. Then I learned, I would say, okay, Kyle, we're going to the grocery store. Tell me what happens. What's at the grocery store? All right. What kinds of items, Kyle, at the grocery store? Now we're in this section right here. What is this section called? And we would look up, vegetables and fruit and, and things like that. And then I'm like, well, so now what kinds of items, what kind of food, Kyle, are in those sections? And so I'm in here just doing grocery shopping now, and he's learning something. I'm talking to him in complete sentences. So I would say, Kyle, go and get my pink purse. I'm looking at my purse over here. Get my pink purse that's sitting on the black couch near this white fan. Then go get my purse, the pink one, and bring it to me. And so, and hopefully it'd be like 2 purses there, right? So I didn't just say, oh, go get me that thing. Go get that purse. I gave details. Yeah. Okay. And then, sometimes you say a purse. Well, I can't even think of another word for one right now, but let's just say we're talking about, give me something that has 2 words. I can't even think of anything right now, but Anyway, go get me the shoes and then go get me the boots. All right,
Okay.
go get me the shoes and go get the sandals. That's not the best example right now, but so I was like, not just, oh, go give me those shoes. Go give me those red boots. The ones that got the glitter on them, because y'all know I like bling. All right, and etc. Okay. And so, go get that book over there. And I don't want that pink book. I want the red book. And remember, red is rectangular. All right. What is a rectangle, Kyle? What's the difference between a rectangle and a square? So his brain is on fire. And he was identified as gifted, even though I had some challenges with this white psychologist. I tell that story all the time. I'm not going to go over it now, but he was eventually identified as gifted. So vocabulary, and I really got to tell you this story. So make sure no matter where you are, you have books available. So one time, I think it was the first time my son and I were flying somewhere. And I packed all these damn books, Dr. Freeman. I'm like, he gonna read. And when I went to give him his books, he was like 8. He didn't want to read in the books. And I'm like, boy, you better come on here. You gonna read this book. So he said, I want to read this magazine. I'm like, what is it? And it was about automobiles. I'm like, what you gonna do with a book about automobiles? He said, I'm learning things, Mom. I'm like what? He said, do you know what? He started naming these parts, and I'm like, carburet, no, this, no, that, no. So that's why I'm reading this book, Mom. So he taught my ass some stuff. So from that point on, I stopped forcing him to read what I wanted him to read, but had a lot of options for what he wanted to read. And so that made him want to read more. Okay.
Right.
Teachers that, because that's where his interests were. And so he was learning. And eventually as an adult, that came back for him when he really was driving, right? So have these books available all the time, and make sure that they're reading those, the language, the vocabulary. That's the number one thing that drives doing well in math, in science, in engineering, in education, in whatever, in counseling. It doesn't matter what the discipline is. You have to have this vocabulary and be able to read.
Yeah.
Now,
what? I'm sorry.
Were you going to ask something else about that, or are you going to do the racial identity?
No, I was going to just say how powerful the things that you're sharing is so powerful and enlightening. And I know our audience is really going to benefit from what you're sharing. I was just going to follow up with this, make this the last question.
Oh, can I tell you something? There was a study long time ago, and Dr. Freeman studied Black children and white children who, low income, from the time they were born and up until the age of, I think it was 3. They went into the house every month, and they studied how many utterances, like and then how many actual vocabulary words there were. Okay. And then how many sentences there were, and things like that, for 1 hour. And then they looked at the child at age 3. Oh, you got to listen to this. They found that a 3-year-old in a wealthy family had a higher vocabulary than a black mother on welfare. A 3-year-old had a higher vocabulary. So families, we got to work on our vocabulary as well, so that we can build this. So you might be sitting there stunned, but I'm telling you, it says 3-year-old upper income white child had a higher vocabulary than a black mother on public assistance. And so from when I learned that, I had to go on and on. So look up on the website. It's called like the 30 million word gap, I think it's called. And then you will learn more about why vocabulary matters and increase, this sense of urgency. And you don't have to be an educator, all right, to be able to do this. Okay, so I hope that if nothing else that I said about the vocabulary and reading, etc., connected with you, I hope you remember that statistic. And I could share others, but I know we don't have time. But it's about race and about income, and we got a lot of work to do, and we can do it. And we love our children. We just got to figure out how to make sure they're successful in schools that were not built for them, designed for them.
Well, my final question was going to be around, is there anything else that you really wanted to share with our audience, and then what are some ways in which people can reach out to you, and if they wanted you to speak for them or do some consulting, anything like that, we want to make sure that they can reach you.
Okay, well, thank you. And let me just say that the last thing I want to say, and I really want to say more, but the last thing I want to say is that so again, in Diverse Issues in Higher Education a few months ago, now has a different name, EDU Ledger. I co-authored another piece, all right, with Hines and maybe a couple other scholars like Tanya Middleton. Anyway, and we talked about how racial pride is a buffer against racism. Racial pride is a buffer against racism. So when you love the skin you're in, when you love your skin tone, when you love being Black, no matter what your caregiver's educational level is and income is, when you love your hair, when you love your shape of your body, nobody can make you feel inferior. You've probably heard that quote, nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. But damn it, yes. I'm saying you have got to, I go off on this. You have got to teach your children to stop this BS about, you acting white because you're light skinned. You're acting white because you have long hair. You're acting white because you speak mainstream English. You're acting white because you're in GATE programs. You're acting white because of how you dress. You're acting white because of the music. Stop that stuff. Let me calm that down. Stop it. You are making things worse for your child. So we've got to get away from this stuff about acting white, and we've got to promote racial pride. And the number one theory for promoting racial pride in your children is called is about William Cross, and it's called the psychology of negrescence. All right, and it means basically the process of becoming Black. So if you look at and read any book or movie on Malcolm X, you will see him go through the stages of racial identity. Go get the book, go watch a video on Malcolm X. You would go through the stages perfectly. And then you will, when you actually read about the stages from Cross's work, or you can read my work, interpreting it, then you will know what to do. And on my website, drdonnay4.com, I have a list of books by the stages of racial identity, the 3 stages of racial identity. And there's a list of books, and they're by grade level too. It's hundreds of books there. So you don't have to go hunt. So if your child is being accused of acting white and they're in the 5th grade, then they can go to that section and you can see some books to select. If they're in high school and it's a boy, then you can see what book to go to for your child at that age level, etc. So that's going back to that bibliotherapy, right? But I'm telling you, when I read Amazing at Blue Hill, and I'm like, and I read it as a 10th grader, but it's for 4th graders. But that's when I heard about it. It's still, I'm like, whoa, that's what I went through. And I'm not the only one who was going through that. Wow, I wish I had known this a long time ago. But I also saw some solutions in there. So all the books have some recommendations, some solutions. So the reading is just so powerful and empowering. Okay, empowering. And I've done studies on acting white that you can read. You can look on ResearchGate if they're not on my website, because like I said, I got 400, almost 400. I'm not posting that many articles and chapters. But anyway, if you look at my CV, my curriculum vitae, you can see and look at the titles, and you can probably get them for free, or see if I can send them to you and read about it. And remember, racial pride is a buffer against racism, and that includes within group accusations of acting white, things like that.
Yes.
So I mean, it matters. Don't be saying, "Oh, you got good hair." Stop that stuff.
Yeah.
"Oh, you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl." Stop it. All right, and things like that. We've got to stop it, and it will be a buffer, a buffer, a buffer. I can't say that enough.
It is so important. I think what you're hitting on also is that we model it. I've had recent conversations with other professionals, and what has unknowingly or subconsciously, they have taken on the ideas of white supremacy. And so many times they're saying, "Oh, we shouldn't do this or we shouldn't do that." And it's based on the ways in which the majority does things. And you're saying, why can't we do what we do based on our own culture? Why is the white culture the standard? And so I think it's important for us within our community as adults to model that for our young people. I am so honored and thankful that you would come on this platform and share the ways in which we can help our young people to facilitate their skills and their talents and their giftedness. And so I will put all the links to the resources that Dr. Ford has shared with us. And I'm looking forward to our audience coming back for our next program. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.